Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 5, the final day of negotiating the new normal, the Future Law Virtual Summit 2020. We've been at it for 4 days. It's been an amazing experience. People from all over the world coming together to figure out how to navigate the incredibly complex challenges that we face from a legal perspective. How can we get policy and law that we're all looking for, that is fair, just, equitable, and respects our planet, and is built as resilient for the future. Today, we are lucky, really lucky, to be with Merlijn Twaalfhoven. He's not a lawyer, he's not a legal expert, he's a conductor, he's a music maker, he's a composer, and he's an artist. And he's the founder of the Turn Club. He'll tell you a little bit more about the Turn Club, I'm sure, in a moment. But what he's going to help us with today is a play shop around navigating uncertainty using the artist's mindset to surf the unknown. I'm very curious. I'm looking very much forward to it. And Merlijn, thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, good morning, everybody, or afternoon, wherever you are. Great to see you. I'm indeed a composer. I created my music on not just on the stages in the concert halls, but on all different places in the middle of society. And what I learned there, I would love to share you a few examples that for me are examples of a way to deal with uncertainty. We live in a time of incredible uncertainty. Imagine a few hundred years ago or 1,000 years ago, people had really a situation that would not change from generation to generation. Well, we have big changes, not just from generation to generation, but from year to year. And then not a change we can predict. And since I feel more recently, the change is also not just getting better. You know, there are big challenges in our world. So this uncertainty, and now especially with crisis around the pandemic, can really creep into your system. And how can we fight a sense of powerlessness, a sense of vulnerability maybe, and how can we get more hold on it, hold on these current times, hold on your position in this big world. And when you have a clear sense of your position in this big world, you can also see how to navigate through uncertainty. And I believe that the artists have a toolbox for this. They're very comfortable, for example, with a blank canvas. And I, as a composer, well, very often I had to start just also with a blank paper, thinking, what can be my music? So in this hour, I would love to give you a few examples of my work, and also, of course, hear from you where in your environment, your professional life, this also applies. So I like to make it active, and also we get to know each other well in a few steps. But let's just start with my first example, and then I also love to give you like small assignments. Okay. I like to tell you a bit from when I was starting as a composer. So imagine I was in a conservatory in Amsterdam, and it was a very exciting time. Lots of musicians to work with, lots of ideas to realize. And we as composers, it was a small group, maybe 10 students, we used to give small concerts where we can show our experiments to people. But once a year, we had a bigger concert. And in I was invited to perform a piece in a huge church. So, but the piece, when I was writing the piece, I didn't know that it would be performed in such a huge space. So the piece was ready. Then we did some rehearsals just at school. But then the day of the performance, we were entering this huge church, and suddenly the music, it is totally different in this big space. So at that moment, well, actually the organization, they put a small stage in the middle with a few, well, they expected maybe 30 or 40 people in the audience. So they made a very small space in the middle of that church. And I decided to use the space. Last minute, just like 10 minutes before the concert started, I thought, why do we only use this small space in the middle? And I put my musicians far away, and they would start the music and walk towards each other. So that for me was a moment that I realized that we very often expect a certain, let's say, frame to the place where we work. And in my case, the frame was like a small stage with people listening. And that moment, I saw that actually our playing field, the field where we can operate, is much bigger than than I was prepared for. So my question to you is, do you have examples of your playing field? You know, where do you operate? And is that limited to a certain area? Usually it is. You have very clear boundaries. But do you remember any occasion that you experienced that your playing field is actually much bigger, so that you could expand beyond the frame that you were used to operate in? I'm checking if this question is clear with you. Good, great. And I would love to maybe to be silent for 2 minutes, so you can maybe write down for yourself and think if there was a situation in your professional environment where your playing field was unexpectedly bigger or different from what you were prepared for. Okay, so I'll be silent for 2 minutes, and then I would love to hear from you if there is an example that you have in your own field.
Okay. Shall we make a quick round? If you, yeah, really curious to hear if you could think of something. It's also a matter of habits or condition that you choose. This is my playing field. Yeah. Could you write something? Julien, did you? And maybe it's nice if you introduce yourself a little bit, give a little bit context.
Hello, I'm Julien, thinker as well, class 7, from France originally, now in Melbourne. Part of what I'm kind of my insight has to my professional life spans across everything from writing to editing, in technology, in governance, in all sorts of areas. And so I had one immediate example of something that was exactly like what you said, and then an insight. The example was, so 2 years ago, I did something that I always wanted to do. I engaged in Ignatian spiritual exercises, which is a deep reflective practice from the Catholic Church. And as a first step, I went for a week of silent retreat in a Jesuit monastery. And so the rule was that I couldn't speak for every day except for 1 hour with the spiritual director. And because there was a rule, I realized that I created other rules in my head, including that I couldn't leave the monastery, and it drove me crazy. And on the second day, I ventured outside and just went on an enormous walk, and then reflected with my spiritual director that I saw every day and say, well, that's what I noticed, that I created this rule for myself. And she congratulated me and said, that's a beautiful experience of freedom. Indeed, you have interpreted the rule in a different way. And I didn't speak during my walk. So that's what I realized. And the insight was professionally that I always believed there was a frame, which was the industry sector. And I've always had, I've never had just one job, and always worked across sectors. And recently I've redefined my work functionally rather than by sector. I help people clarify their ideas, align teams. I do that in multiple contexts, in multiple projects. And so there's, rather than framing around the sector, I frame around the function. And that creates an enormous amount of freedom to just change the type of categories that I apply.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you.
Great, nice. Yeah, indeed. And for the others, we have a few. Michael, Mohammed, welcome. We are discussing a few tools from the artist's toolbox, and one of it is to claim actually your playing field, the place where you are inside some rules or inside some boundaries, where you have the freedom to create or to perform. And I'm curious, Satoshi, do you have an example in your life?
Yes, yeah. So I'm a previous school teacher. I live in Melbourne, and I'm a friend of Julien's, and he's the one who introduced me to this group. So nice to meet you all. So I was a school teacher for 11 years, and I taught, areas like philosophy and humanities and a bit of economics and stuff like that. And this year I moved on to work in an organization called AEF, as you can probably see in my name. But yeah, we are sort of a professional development organization. We deliver things like youth forums and teacher development sessions for students and teachers across Australia. So naturally, we do quite a bit of work with the government departments in Australia. So each state in Australia, there's, state and territory in Australia has a government, and we do work with probably 4 or 5 of them quite actively. And when I started work this year, because this is the first really sort of policy related job, I guess I came in with a fairly sort of, how can I say, fairly fixed mindset in terms of, what the government departments are like, because people always tell you, yeah, that's what the governments, they're very slow. They don't want to change anything. But slowly, we do these kind of contracts with these government departments based on our organizational, how can I say, strategies and, you know, what their intents are, and we do these kind of things. And I've, you know, I certainly felt that the things were quite constrained, you know, in the way that their governments work, in terms of how they push the agenda. But for whatever the reasons, these people started to reach out to me individually, so outside work. So they'll email my personal email and say, hey, there's stuff that I want your opinions on. So not as a representative of this company, sorry, organization, but just say, well, here's something that I would like to take, you know, have your input on. So gradually, without even me trying to do so, they are starting to actually engage me as an independent, almost consultant in some of the stuff that they do. And what I'm realizing is that when I engage with them as an individual, they're much more candid in what they say. So there are a lot of people within the government departments that really want to do very progressive things, but because conventionally they have to rely on larger organizations, I suppose what they can achieve or what they can conceive to achieve could be limited. And it's exactly the situation that I'm in, where I have to represent an organization, and the stuff I can do through an organization, even though I'm the only designer, is quite conservative and limited, or the director doesn't want to necessarily, you know, take it to a very sort of a, how can I say, progressive or up to date sort of thing. So that's a kind of interesting situation where people somehow find you, and they probably sense that I'm wanting to do something more. So without actually intending to, I'm starting to actually be exposed to these bigger, I guess, conceptual field within the policy space.
Yeah, what's very interesting in your story for me is we have roles in life. Maybe when we do a study or when we get a degree, it's like a mark, sticker, and we act these roles. And in many cases, this is expected from us, but also it's self-imposed. I think we sometimes don't question it too much. And that was my experience when I was in this large church. Suddenly I realized, why not use the whole space? Because it's not my job to create a concert. Well, to limit my concert. No, my job is to create a good time for everyone who was present. So I was more responsible for the experience instead of for just the music. I look to Esther or Karin. Do you have did you write down an example of your playing field? Esther?
We have to manage sound because we're in the same room. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So years ago, I had a youth theater school. So what we did was we got into the streets and then found young people and asked them to make theater with us. And that was really nice. And what happened is that we made these theater pieces that were very, very much reflecting the youth culture. So it was their music, it was their colors, it was really representing them. And then we were really trying to teach them to appreciate other kinds of art or music, and we, they were just laughing at us. We couldn't get it across. And so one day we came up with this idea to give a one-on-one date with somebody from an elderly home. So one young person with someone from an elderly home, they had to be together for 3 hours. We gave them €5 to buy a present for this older person, and the only thing we asked both was to bring one piece of music that speaks to them. So what happened was that out of this project, you know, they really started to, well, they heard all the stories behind the music that was chosen, and they started to create their own new music. So they edited together, and then that became part of a play, and then all the elderly people came into there as well. And what happened actually was that I didn't really have to do anything. So I think what I want to say is that I think my experience with where you feel this space, I think it's for me personally, it's understanding more and more that it's not about how hard I work, but it's something else. But what it is, I don't know yet for sure. Maybe I shouldn't know, but there's something else that's of relevance as well. I don't know if I'm making sense. That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. I feel this. I mean, playing, experimenting needs boundaries, because every good play has very clear limits, because then these limits, also inside the limits, you can feel safe to take risks, safe to do things that are unknown, because that is a play. You test the limits. You try things. So there is a very interesting. I think we should be aware of boundaries, and we should question the boundaries. So in my case, my concert, when I felt the whole church is my play field, then I found new boundaries. So instead of the limited space of the stage, well, but it still had boundaries. So that is for me an important point: the strength of limitations and the freedom that's inside it. So maybe this is the question of this first thing, artist thing, is like, what is your canvas? Canvas, where do you have this total freedom to create, to be uncertain? I like to give you a second idea, because this first example was for me a long time ago, and a few years after that, I continued with creating music, performances, and I was also in a large space, and also a former church. A few years later, working with dancers and musicians, and they were all over the space, creating music. They danced around, and the audience was sitting at the side. And halfway of this performance, a door went open, and an old man walked in and crossed, in the middle where the people were dancing. He was just walking there, putting his jacket on somewhere, and then finding its way, and he was sitting down also somewhere to enjoy the performance. Well, this was just someone who was late, but because of the audience, they were watching the scene. For them, it felt part of the performance. And also the dancers, they adapted right away and included in some way him in the whole performance. First, I was of course worried, because he was disturbing my my composition, and then I saw the beauty and the fascinating interaction between that unexpected visitor and this group of young dancers. So in this case, there was something from outside that was actually disturbing my composition. But because we had an open perception, we were there with attention to see what was going. We also saw the beauty of it, and it was actually a wonderful moment, something that I could not have composed myself. So in this case, the unexpected can be a gift. And it depends, of course, of the mindset where it's in. Because if my mindset was just, for example, if I wanted to record a perfect dance that I had designed, then I would have said like, oh, stop, we should do this again because someone is intruding us. But now it was a live performance. I could not stop it. I accepted it, and it actually, made it a wonderful, experience. So this is my second question to all of you. Maybe you can have a moment to write down for yourself. Can you make space for the unexpected? Or how do you make space for the unexpected? Because the unexpected can give a gift sometimes. But in our life, when we organize everything very efficient, there's no space for that. We are we're organizing. We're making sure no chaos can happen. So where do you see space for the unexpected? Or do you have an example of a moment that you felt, now I accept the unexpected and it's rewarding? Okay, I won't talk much more unless you are confused right now, then you should wave at me. But let's take a moment, write down for yourself this about a beautiful accident. 2 minutes. Okay. So I would love to hear an example, and maybe someone we didn't hear yet. Mohammed, did you write down something? And curious if you have a camera and if you can hear your voice. Yeah, can you share something? Or Alex? Maybe they're making coffee this moment. Yes.
I know,
Hey there.
sorry, I've just joined. Being here in Cape Town, it's 9:30, so my apologies. I didn't write down anything.
Don't worry. Yeah, no, you're
Thanks.
welcome. You're welcome. Just listen in, and maybe I'll come back to you
Yes,
later.
later.
Yeah. Maybe Michael, did you write down something? Yeah, or someone else. Just let me know what was. We were talking about improvisation basically. So what's your example, Karim?
I can share something. So I love improvisation. So I'm quite a flexible person with regards to what comes on my path. The only place I'm seeing it really as a huge challenge, and I'm surprised by it myself, is at home with the kids. So so we have two young boys, and they're 4 and 2, and you can imagine things often go quite differently than you expected them to. And I think the dynamic between my partner and I are that we both react to that. So we feed into each other's reaction to things not going as we expect or as we want them to go, and that actually costs a lot of energy. So I'm blatantly aware of the fact that costs a lot of energy, and we're starting to train ourselves to go, this is just what happens, right? And it just there's a release in that, and at the end of the day you feel better about all your interactions, because with kids you can get angry at them, or you can try to cajole them to do things differently, but in the end it's really about what goes on inside, and are you okay with that, I guess. And I think I'm taking that into multiple places in my life as well.
Yeah, this is a good example, because I can imagine if you are the adult in the room, you think the things should go a certain way, and then a child will disturb that. They will have their own way or their own thing. And in some cases, well, when will you just be the parent and be strict? And in other cases, there is maybe something to learn here, or something to see that you don't see. I also I have 2 kids, and you can be really sometimes be late in understanding what was the real reason, for example, for the young boy to rebel or to be angry. And then it's very important to know when to look better and to listen better, instead of continue with your plan. Indeed. Satoshi, do you have an example of the unexpected?
Yeah, I suppose I do. It's more like I could just talk to the way I see the topic that you're discussing here. So I think, generally speaking, I think when people talk about unexpected or improvisation, I think people often approach that from how can I say, whatever the words we describe, creativity or artistic mindset or whatever maybe. But I think, deep down, well, at least in my work and at least in what I do, say, for example, with music, etc., I think, because I think there's a deeply emotional aspect to improvisation and dealing with unexpectedness. I think a degree of, beyond the curiosity and everything, I think a degree of deep expertise actually plays a role here. So in order for you to feel comfortable to just get in and see what happens, and then try, and not just to kind of deal with it, but to actually to actually use the unexpected in order to elevate, say, your audience experience, your participants' experience. You do need a quite a high expertise just to feel for you to feel comfortable. And also the other element of that is, I think there's a lot of really, I mean, because the social world is such an infinitely complex thing, there is a lot of stuff going on all the time. And I think having again deep expertise in any of the areas actually allow you to see the complexity that perhaps other people might miss. And so therefore it's not so much of that like you're creating perhaps it's not so much that you're creating a kind of unexpected, it's more like you're noticing that there is an opportunity to play with unexpectedness.
Well, this is interesting. Competing things enter my head right now, because what you mentioned, because I totally agree, if you have deep expertise, you have also the freedom to flourish. And I know that for a musician, if you know the music really by heart, you can be on the stage and feel free and be there really in the moment to deliver something beautiful. I also see many cases when people have this expertise, and the expertise is also locking them into a certain mindset. And when a child is playing, well, she has no deep expertise, maybe. She's just curious, but also comfortable. So I believe this matter of comfort, the safety. My dancers in the church, they felt okay. It was not an exam where they had to do a specific routine where they were judged. No, it was a performance. They were very attentive. At the same moment, they felt they had the freedom to incorporate the visitor, the unexpected guest. So, yeah.
It's an ecological thing, isn't it? Like you I guess if you have the cultural condition around you that allows you to I guess flourish in, if we equate the sort of using the freedom as a one form of flourishing, then in some sense, I suppose the one thing that deliberately we can do is just to kind of create a cultural condition around us to allow ourselves to play, some of which includes, I guess, surrounding yourself with, of course, like-minded people or people that think differently from you. So there's no kind of cultural norms that compress the way you think. So these are some of the deliberate things that I try to do, I guess, day to day.
Yeah. Is that also because the classroom is, of course, the best environment where you have very clear boundaries? You are together in this class, and you have the diversity of different opinions, different styles, different emotions. So it's maybe, beautiful example of how boundaries and diversity, is a very good combination. And maybe it's, if I think of our society today, the Netherlands, but it happens in many places. There is diversity. People have very different ideas, but we don't feel a sense of boundaries anymore. It's not, we are not sure what defines together or what defines us, who we are. Is it the borders of our country, or is it a certain class or a certain style or a certain, and that is when such boundaries are unclear, then maybe you also cannot have a good discussion, or you cannot have a good conversation or a good exchange of ideas, because you're not in a certain place together.
You could also, I guess, flip that question around and start. We can all, I suppose, ask ourselves, I guess, in the first place, why do we crave, or why do we want this thing called national identity? What's making us feel so insecure or unstable? So So that's the other side of the question, because we sort of assume that everybody wants the sense of this is who we are. Well, why do we need that in the first place?
Yeah, I like this as a interesting side way. The instability of the stories that we tell in these time, you know, this is a big topic, you know, the time of change, time of insecurity. What is the stories that we can tell about our world? And a story give boundaries. And because there is a lack of stories, we don't share the same stories. People feel, like, well, lost. And I cannot speak from. I mean, this is what I experienced a lot in Europe or in the Netherlands. Yeah, it's a big question where not just like who is telling the story, but also who is defining the we that share a story, and then local things like coming together or being a village or an area, or you know, a local entity that can really help. That's also a way I feel that a big task for artists, but other creatives, to find local places or communities to relate to. Well, before I move forward, is there another example of a happy coincidence or something that disturbed your plan but made it better? Yeah, Esther or Julien, maybe. Otherwise, I'll move on. No, Julien?
I reflected on something around creating the conditions for it to happen. So I realized that more and more and more, as part of a creative process, I completely embrace that anything good will come not from me, but will be a gift. And that my role is to sit very still and pay attention to whatever is happening outside and in my brain, and grab onto the right idea when it emerges. And so it's discernment that is critical. Everything is given, but you just need to see it when it passes and then grab it. But that the great risk is that I would be on a rut and miss out on certain things. And so that what I've actually developed is a deliberate cultivation of variety, of diverse diet, kind of almost spiritual, cognitive, emotional, etc., artistic diet. So I try to be with different people, different emotions, different story genres, different languages, music, food, blah, 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 all the time, so that I'm increasingly capable of seizing things that happen without being in a too defined by one particular rut, because I'm constantly rebalancing with others. So I've noted that that's what I do. And I never really realized that I did that before.
Beautiful. Great. I go to the third and last example. It is now 15 years ago that I was working in Cyprus, and that was a very, well, I told you about experiments in the church with dancers, but step by step, I also started exploring other spaces. And I explored the outdoors. What can happen if musicians are far away from each other? And when I visited Cyprus, I saw that we have a country with two sides, a north and a south, and in the middle, a piece of no man's land with mines and barbed wire and a lot of soldiers. So what I did, I asked musicians from the north and the south to stand on the roof and to make music so the other side could hear it. Well, and it was a whole composition where people had clocks, like stopwatches, and they had a certain cues on the clock to make their music, and then to be silent and to listen for a response. So there was a whole, a huge yeah, a huge project, and I would love to show you a bit. So maybe Esther, if you can make me co-host, I can share my screen. Then I show you a few yeah, moments from it, and I will also check if that is.
Merlijn, if you share your screen, make sure that you push the button that the sound is coming with it as well.
Yeah.
It's on the left corner.
Yeah, I have it. Okay. Perfect. So let me play you. So can you see some image now? Here is a picture of the buffer zone in Cyprus, the north and south, soldiers there. It is like
most interesting illustration that I can offer of the division in this island is right over there between those 2 points. That is the ultimate metaphor. It is frozen in time since 1974. Shop fronts, a street that was thronged with people and no longer is.
So this is part of my performance.
I realized that I just should be open and listening to what's actually happening. And then I heard that even the things that went different from my plans actually worked out great. So then the whole project was no longer my composition or my plan, but it was really something that we shared with this whole community.
Green line by the riverside. Green line by the village. Green line in the middle of the town.
Yeah, this is the buffer zone.
And love. A line that is black, not green. A line that should be erased, buried in history.
When that wall comes tumbling down, I want to see freedom sign. When that wall comes tumbling down, when that wall comes tumbling down,
There's my saxophone player, middle. Okay, so this is an impression of a huge, huge concert, and what I would love to talk about now is not so much. I mean, there was a lot of work, a lot of musicians took part. It was, of course, all the tension of the political thing with the North and the South and all the army in between, cameras, because it was like when there is tension, then the journalists get interested. But there was this moment, somewhere in the middle, they had all kind of schedules, these musicians, and the schedule, there was some mistake. So there was a silent moment like 2 minutes that I had composed something, but no one was playing. And I was worried, what's happening? No one is playing. Well, the audience was there and the silence was there. And later people told me that was the most impressive moment. Because they were listening to music, the music was stopped, but they continued listening. Their perception was very open, and suddenly they could hear the normal world, like a carpenter doing something in a woodwork, or some children's voices, or a rooster making a cry. And that was so touching for people. They said like, oh, I heard the normal life on this place where there is always the story of the Civil War, the occupation, separation, all this tension. No, now it was just the sound. So what happened that I only realized later is that I introduced kind of a frame to look, this is a concert. There is music, listen up. But then I took away the concert, and what was left was this open perception, people being there, listening. And then the sounds of the normal world were actually more impressive maybe than the music. So for me, this was a very important moment that I realized that value is not so much what we create as artists, but it's much more the mindset that that appears when people come together and are attentive and are open. What also was, we didn't have big slogans. We didn't say like, we are doing the concert for this or for that. It was musicians on rooftops, and just that. So the sound, that was the story. So I would love to, as a last exercise, to explore a bit this notion of when you don't have a clear purpose or like a clear goal to a certain setting, then really a new kind of value can appear. That was what I learned. Our goal was not to reunite the island or to make a certain statement. It was, for me, let's just be on the rooftops and make music, and that was it. And because people were there, it's hard to explain what happened. They shared, they were very impressed because it opened something in their minds, especially in a place where it is very closed because of the political pressure that is on this situation. So my question is, do you have a situation or similar example where you felt that in a place where there is all kinds of pressure could be and kind of a new space that can free us from that pressure? And I'm deliberately a bit vague because I don't want to push you in a certain direction. I want to see if there is something in your experience that is similar and different from what happened in Cyprus. Maybe a situation where there was you needed to perform, you needed to be successful or to achieve something, and then suddenly you find a way to step out of that pressure and to be open for, yeah, things that are hard to maybe to describe in words, that are not part of your goal that you did set, but so kind of yeah, unexpected. Okay, I like to stop talking for 2 minutes and then do our last round. See if you have something to contribute this direction. Okay. So what did you write down? What source of possibilities did you see in some moments? Alex, can I ask you to share something? Yeah, or Esther?
Oh. Can you hear me? Okay, good. So, so what happens with me when I'm thinking about these questions is that it's not so much examples coming forward, but more that I start to exploring a bit around your question. So what I was exploring is that the example that you just gave with the musicians, bringing, you know, this moment of silence where everybody was attentive and shared that moment, right? It almost feels like, to experience the unknown, we have to sometimes step out of the how we are organized, or how we pattern our day, or come to this other frequency. And for me, it always feels like you need some, almost a force to get you there. So I really understood your example, Julien, with the silence. So what I experience when I go to a place like that, where you have, where you're quiet, then the first maybe 1 or 2 days, I get so frustrated and so angry and so much, I don't know, going on. And this needs to happen before I can sort of settle down and something else can happen. And in your example, what I found was interesting is that it's not aggressive, an aggressive way, and it's collectively experienced. So these were my thoughts. I don't know.
It's helpful. It's helpful. Yeah, and also you noticed that I'm also searching for words. It's hard to grasp. There is such a lot of failure when we step out of the things that we are organizing or planning, or but we should also create. We should help this to happen. I mean, in Cyprus, if I just was on the street and I would shout and I would say, like, everybody listen, because it's beautiful to hear the sounds of the birds, people would just go on, so I had to organize all these musicians in order for them to stop, and people would hear the sound of the birds. So do you have a way?
Yes, and it was given to you as well, because I mean, you weren't working on let them listen to the birds, right, when you started? No. So
exactly. But the fact that I was creating music and and experimenting with it, putting it, people on rooftops. So there was a lot of unknown in it, but also a lot that created the sense that something is happening. There is musicians there is children in the streets singing. And so again, this play with boundaries, or with the fact, yes, there is something concrete, and inside that concrete there is also openness and also unknown. We need, I feel, these two aspects always. Yeah. And that is, I think, interesting in art, maybe also in other professions. You have the skills that you have, the deep expertise, as you mentioned it, Satoshi. But do you also have the capacity to step back and to not do your skillful things at the right moment? That, I think, is the what artists are also very good at. The whole the search not for just more or bigger or faster, but for balance, or for dynamic between if I think of visual arts works, it should never be it's always a search how colors or forms, or same in stories, how they leave enough space for your imagination to be part of it. Do you understand? Your own imagination, when that's activated, then the artwork is a success. When the artwork is full, the story is full, like a Hollywood movie, okay, it's great entertainment. It's nice, but you're not in an active, you're not creating yourself. But a good work of art makes the the listener or the audience become active. Yeah, so that is a sense of co-creation that's there. Wow. Yeah, I would love to hear more from you. Yeah, Esther?
Yeah, can I, what I was thinking as well when you were talking about this is that I think that when we work, not maybe when we work in arts, but in other segments, I have the idea that most work is done in the head, right? And in the structure, and in designing by head. And then these experiences are felt in the body. So it's not that we think, oh, I hear a bird, but you hear the bird and then something happens in the body that, you know, that you experience and then it's impactful, not because you think, hey, I hear a bird. So I think that is something as well that's part of this discovery, that the unknown is using, you know, these artist insights that you're talking about. It's also about maybe connecting things and, you know, thoughts and body, something like that.
Well, art is a way to make things that you cannot grasp, to translate that into a physical experience. That's why music is sound, or visual arts is a form, and so it's actually a materializing way, like a translating way. Yeah, and I think that is that's very important for us to translate these different words into different worlds, world of yeah, our feelings or our concepts, but also translate it into visual or music. Yeah, that yeah, then we find other dimensions of it. Yeah, I think we should conclude. In my side of the globe, it's 10 o'clock. Yeah, is there something you like to share as a final thing, Julien or Satoshi? Good. Yeah, thanks a lot for joining. And Karim.
So no, you have to do a shameless plug of your book, even though I know it's in Dutch. But where do you want people to sign up? You got to talk about your book a little bit, and obviously, if enough people sign up to get your book, then in English, then there will be a fast English translation, right? I'm pretty sure.
Well, yes, I should. Yeah, I'm going for a translation. So I really hope next time we speak to each other, I can tell you more about that. But yeah, thanks for reminding that. Yeah, I hope to, because this was 1 hour with a few examples. I feel very dedicated to make the whole notion of what an artist mindset can bring to all professionals who want to be part of change and creating a better world. Well, that is my priority. I believe we can really work on that.
Wonderful. Do you have a place where people can leave their contact details with you? A website you want them to land on, or do you just want them to leave it now in the chat? But you also have to realize that this video is going to be watched by hopefully many more people after this. So
yeah,
quickly go build a landing page today if you have some time.
Yes. but let's for sure connect on LinkedIn and see if that is maybe a first step. But I should work on that. Yeah.
Yes, you should. The modest artist you always will be, Merlijn. I'm going to do it. Merlijn has just released an incredible book in Dutch. It's only in the Dutch language as of now, but Merlijn can be found via the turnclub.org. Just check it out. It's a wonderful organization that is basically he's building a movement of artists across the world, and bringing the artist mindset to all kinds of complex challenges. So I'm actually very proud to be a part of that Turn Club myself. And the book on how to apply an artist's mindset is called in Dutch. Put it in the chat, Merlijn. Just look it up. Keep an eye on it. I'll make sure you get the contact details of these folks. It's up to us, he's basically saying.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Up to us is the title. Thank you very much, Merlijn. I thought it was really insightful. There's so much in here, so much to unpack. I love to teach mindsets myself, and facilitates experiencing new mindsets, and this is given me a lot of inspiration. Thank you very much for today. It was brilliant.
Yay! Bye-bye.
Bye.